No, this return side. Are we doing that separately?
Yes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start this Plan Commission meeting. It's June 18th, 5:02, and I'm calling it to order. First item is approval of the May 2024 meeting minutes.
Commissioner, I just want to say, we had a couple of comments from planning commissioners on a couple of minor changes. The copies that you guys have before you just have, I think there's 3 minor corrections. One of them was we had a couple, or had a request for the folks that were, it was the first meeting yesterday to show them as abstaining, Mr. Strong, Mr. Belcher on the vote on the minutes, since that you guys weren't here in April. So we showed that on page 1. On page 12, there was down toward the bottom, we don't don't know y'all, we should get the new guys on the planning commission, so we're getting them mixed up. So I think we had Mr. Belcher, where it says Mr. Belcher asked for clarification of the type of height of trees and buffer. We had somebody else saying that, and that turned out that was Mr. Belcher that said that. And then on page 19, there was one other minor thing. Same thing, Mr. Belcher asked what kind of mess it will be if the request were denied. And so we had somebody else saying that was Mr. Belcher that said that. So those are the only changes that we had that had come to us. And so that's what's before the planning commission.
That's great. So with those changes, could I entertain a motion to approve? Mr. Instant? Second by Mr. Williams. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approval of the June agenda. Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Holmes. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. We are going to do the public comments as the projects come up after the draft presentation. And we will allow 5 minutes because I think we've got a fairly short meeting and I want everybody to be able. Don't take the 5 minutes if you don't have to, but if you need 5 minutes, you've got it. So with that, yes, ma'am.
It says public comments for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. I don't think you need it for a public hearing, right?
Well, no, so the state law requires us to have a public comment period on all these agendas. So we put that language on there. None of these require a formal public hearing. But the past practice of the planning commission has been to allow a public hearing on each item, but that's what y'all want to do. There's nothing that says you can't do that.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, I think just to let the folks know, I know we had last meeting, some folks that wanted to speak outside of the public comment period. Just remind them that this is the only time that they're allowed to speak.
Okay, yes, as we do the public comments after the draft presentation of every project, that's the time when the public can and should speak. We did in the last meeting have some people that wanted to kind of run the meeting their own way, and we had to stop that. So when I state that we'll be doing the public comment, Mr. Sutton will read off the list, and we'll go ahead and do it that way, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Any other issues before we go on the first project? Seeing none, Mr. Sutton, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I did want to know before we get started on item number 1, we had a couple of people that came in. We had this up on the screen prior to the meeting. There was an item that was to have been on this agenda tonight. It was a Lewis City Commercial Plaza PUD amendment number 2. We've got some folks that are wanting to, it's different between things we've seen in the past on that property. There's some folks wanting to do mini storage on one of the parcels there. Little certified letters went out to the neighbors, but the newspaper notice didn't get to the paper in time, that the applicant takes it to the paper or something, or the paper didn't publish, whatever the case was. It didn't make it in the papers, and we couldn't have it on the agenda. But I did want to just let people know there's a paper in line. That item is on the July agenda.
Okay, was there anybody who was planning on speaking to the Lewis Head project? Okay, I guess that's no. All right.
And so, Mr. Chairman, the first item on the agenda is McGregor Downs preliminary plat. First slide here kind of shows the general location of this project. As you can see, it's northeast of the city limits of the city of Gallatin, just off of Highway 31E. Shell Brothers is the applicant and developer for this project. It's represented by C.J. Laurel, 615 Design Group. I think I saw C.J. earlier somewhere. Located along Brandon Mill Road. This property is currently zoned rural residential with a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size. That's the zoning at this time. The proposal contains 32 lots across 107.99 acres. What that translates to is 0.29 units per acre, or put another way, 1 unit per 3.37 acres. They're proposing to utilize the rural estate cross-section, which requires a larger lot size, so they're using that 100, that is 100, if you use that rural estate cross-section, essentially that allows you to reduce the right-of-way width and reduce the pavement width from 22 feet to 18 feet. But basically, in exchange for that, for the less infrastructure costs, you don't have to do sidewalk or curb or gutter, but you are required to have larger lots, which is 100,000 square feet. Public utilities for this project, public water is to be provided by Cascade Springs Bethpage Utilities, CEMC is the electric provider, as far as I know. Individual septic tanks are what's proposed here, so septic system or public sewer would be septic systems. TDEC septic permits would be required later on in the process after the development is approved. And those permits, those septic permits are obtained near to the building permit stage. So the subject property, just to show a little history, it's not shown, but US 31 is back this way. Back several years ago, this development here, Brown Mule Estates was approved a number of years ago. Mr. Steve Bridges was the developer on that one. More recently, I believe it was late last year, earlier this year, the landing at Brown came through. This was, I believe it was 23 lots. It was the number of lots here on this piece of property. That was Shell Brothers. Just like this property likewise is being developed by Shell Brothers as well. And as I said, it has 32 lots. This weird thing going through the middle of it here is an abandoned railroad right-of-way. I don't know if abandoned is technically the legal term for it, but it's a right-of-way that is not in use. I think there's been a few folks that have made a run at trying to get the railroad to get that or sell that to them, but that's easier said than done sometimes. So what it would do is it would essentially function as kind of a buffer in between these two developments. This is the preliminary plat that was turned in, showing the lot configuration. You can see from the original, if y'all remember last month, there was a conceptual lot layout that was turned in that showed the road basically as a straight shot coming off of Brown Mill Road. There's a little bit more of a meander to it now, similar to what was done, or what's being done now. It's under construction next door in the Brandon Springs development. This is just another shot of the preliminary plat here. Here's the lot size table. You see the lots range from really close to 100,000 square feet, some up to 200,000. I think the largest lot is this one at 420,000 square feet. It's one of these bigger lots down here. Several of them are in excess of 5 acres. Would need to be platted because they're on a public road, a new public road. And this is just a closer view of the development, kind of cutting it in half and zooming in just a little bit more. You see the individual building lots. These shaded areas, I believe, where it's a little darker, are the septic soil areas. They do have a preliminary soil analysis done across the property. And these little squares here are just, what those are is potential home sites. We just have to show where the home sites could go across the property. That's something that the subdivision regulations has in there, something they can do. The architecture, we asked the question that this is a preliminary plat application on a by right project. This isn't something that's a rezoning where they're doing a plan unit development where architecture is required or anything like that, and we can get into a back and forth about garage design and those kinds of things. But on this, what we asked them was, if they would provide that, and what they said was essentially what was done to the project next door. Similar architecture feel for this project as well, and so I just inserted the Brandon Springs architecture as well because I've been told it's going to be very similar, if not identical. And we had a couple of questions from some residents about front load garages, can we make them turn it sideways and those kinds of things? And the answer to that is no. On a preliminary plat application like this, it's a by right application. Some counties aren't empowered to do design review. Many municipalities have limited design review when it comes to single family residential. The state legislature has been cracking down on that for the last few years, but within this context, you can't say we don't want front load garage or whatever. There's any number of housing types that are allowed in the, by right per state law, and in residentially zoned property. Again, if it was a rezoning, it would be a different story, and there'd be a lot more back and forth on that. The comprehensive plan has this area in the rural place type. As the planning commission may know, there are some zoning changes that are proposed, that'll be going to the the county commission, next month. This area, part of those changes would be rezoned to, rural, rural preservation, zoning district, which would also have 100,000 square foot lot size. So in that regard, these lots would comply with the new zoning as well. As I mentioned earlier, utilities and fire protection, public water is to be provided by Cascade Springs Bed-Based Utilities. They did furnish an availability letter. County hydrant requirements are shown as being met on the plat. All lots will be within 500 feet of the hydrant, and all lots, as I said, are going to be on septic systems. This is the water hydrant and water and fire hydrant availability letter that Cascade Springs provided upon the applicant's request. They have a contract with this Heathcote Davis firm who does these analyses for them. And basically what they do is they look and make a determination as to whether water is available, potable water for drinking, and if the county's fire flow requirements will be met, at which match the state's, which is 500 gallons per minute and 20 psi residual pressure for hydrant installation. And they concluded that it would be. Now they'll have their own utility upgrades and that kind of thing that'll be required, but the county doesn't own or operate any public utility. The county can't dictate any utility what it can or can't require. But that said, what we can require is fire hydrants. And so fire hydrants are required for this development, and they've shown that they're going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to satisfy that requirement. The line within the development is going to be a 6-inch line, which is the minimum water main size that's allowed to be installed. You can't install a water line less than 6 inches in Sumner County as part of the development. I mentioned that they have a preliminary soils analysis. This is what they turned in. It's been staffed by, that's Adam Brown, who's a soil scientist licensed in the state of Tennessee. And so the soils work has been done on this. Roads, adequate right-of-way is shown as dedicated along Brandon Mill Road. This project does have some frontage on Brandon Mill Road, 25 feet from the center line. There is one new future county road, as I mentioned, proposed to be constructed to service this. That's that road that runs through the middle of the development. Brandon Mill at this location, I have it on there, is approximately 6 feet wide, but Brandon Mill Road, it varies depending on where you're at. A little closer to Highway 31, it is 19 or 20 feet wide. As you move further back, it varies between 16 and 18 feet wide. They have furnished a traffic impact study. Additional improvements are required per the traffic impact study, and I'll mention what those are here in just a minute and show the findings from the traffic impact analysis that they turned in. And we have added a condition of approval that the findings of that traffic impact study have to be implemented prior to the recording of any final plats for this project. And so this is taken from the traffic impact study. That full document was in the packet. Of course, there's a whole lot of calculations and weird diagrams and turning calculations and those kinds of things, but the gist of it is in the conclusions and recommendations section. What it concludes is that a southbound left turn lane should be provided on Highway 31E at Brandon Mill Road. And so if you're coming down from Macon County direction or side view direction and toward this development, it does call for a left turn lane with at least 100 feet of storage should be designed and constructed according to AASHTO standards, which is kind of the manual for traffic improvements. AASHTO, I forget what it stands for at the moment, but American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. I don't remember. So number 2, so that's the southbound left turn lane has to be installed. Likewise, the northbound right turn lane should be provided. And so again, 100 feet of storage, constructed AASHTO standards. They do note that it's warranted at this time. That right turn lane is coming up from Gallatin is already needed, and so it would continue to be needed as part of this development too. So we have a condition of approval that those items be added. Number 3 is a little bit more ambiguous. It's recommended, what it says is it is recommended that the developer of the proposed project coordinate with the Sumner County Planning, Engineering Department, and Highways Department in order to identify the appropriate cross-section of Brandonville Road along the frontage. I was out there the other day, just looking at this project and the one next to it. And that project along this frontage, it's a little bit tighter than what you have on the portion of the project that fronts the Steve Brooks project that I mentioned earlier. That one is 19, 20 feet wide. As you move back, the road gets a little narrower, and it's in need of an overlay as well. I think it's not fully deteriorated, but it's a little rough. And so that might be another condition. I don't have that on there, but it might be a condition of approval that the road needs to be, Brandonville Road needs to be 18 feet wide and needs to be overlaid as part of this project as well, at least along the project frontage to fix it up. This is the rural estate cross-section that they're proposing to build within the development. And so what it shows is real small font, I'm sorry, it's probably hard to read, probably easier to see on this one over here, but this is a 40-foot cross-section with an 18-foot pavement width, with a ditch section on both sides. And so again, it's built to a good standard as far as how it's built, the layers of the road, I guess you might say. But in general, the infrastructure requirements are significantly less for the developer, which is desirable from the developer's point of view. But from the county's point of view as well, these kinds of narrower road, as long as it accommodates everybody and is safe, a narrower road is less expensive to maintain over time. It's less pavement. And so there's a factor for that too. So this is something that was put in place a couple of years ago. Drainage, they have provided a full set of construction plans and drainage calculations in support of this application, and those are under review by the county engineer at this time. There will need to be a notice of coverage obtained and an aquatic resource alteration permit from any stream disturbances that might occur as part of this project. Those will need to be obtained from TDEC. They've provided a water resource inventory, or they've conducted one at this point. They have no streams and wetlands depicted on the plat. And any stream buffers and that kind of thing have to be shown within easements on the final plat. And there's just a blanket statement there that the stormwater management resolution requirements have to be met on plans and during construction. We do monitor and inspect these projects on a regular basis. Findings of fact, per the county bylaws. Number 1, is it consistent with the comp plan and zoning generally? Yes. Does it contravene the purposes for zoning and subdivision regulations? No, it doesn't. And does it comply with the county's subdivision requirements? It appears to, from staff's analysis. 3, is it the subdivision as designed will not create adverse effects upon adjoining property owners? We don't see that it is likely to. The property will drain generally south toward the Shea Creek, not up toward the road necessarily. There are traffic impacts, and that traffic impact study was required as part of this to take into account all the traffic from all the lots built or unbuilt at this time. And so, as part of that finding of fact, that there are required traffic improvements that are being required to mitigate any adverse impacts that the development might have, and frankly, to create a safer situation on Highway 31. There's already improvements that are warranted at this location. 4, no one owner or small group of property owners will benefit materially from this approval to the detriment of the general public. We don't see that that's the case. Next steps. This is approved this evening. They'll need to obtain construction plan approval from the county engineer, as well as any required permits from TDEC. So that's the NOC, the notice of coverage, the aquatic resources alteration permit, or ARAP, et cetera, if there are any issues with those two. After the construction plans are approved, the TDEC has issued all the permits. They'll schedule a pre-con meeting with my office where they come here and meet with us, have their contractor here, and we talk about the county's requirements. After the pre-con meeting, they're allowed to obtain the land service permit, and we can start grading the site. We do inspect the project through the infrastructure installation process, county staff does. Including road tests on the road, and making sure that everything's installed like it's supposed to be. Once the infrastructure is installed to a point of substantial completion and it gets approved by the county engineer, that's when they can come back with the final plat, along with surety for any remaining improvements on the road and drainage. Top coat of the road, in particular, is the big one on this. And then once they brought that can be put on the plan commission agenda, the final plat can be approved, and then lots can be sold and building permits obtained. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen. Example motion 1 being to find that all county requirements are met and to approve this plat. Contingent upon the following conditions, and I'll just run through those quickly. 1, they have to obtain stamp approval from the county engineer for construction plans prior to getting that main stream permanent and start work. 2, all the roadway and drainage infrastructure has to be installed to a point of substantial completion prior to their turning in a final plat. C, all road improvements recommended in the traffic impact study shall be completed by the applicant prior to the recording of a final plat. So what that means is that the road work in Highway 31 has to be done before they can build on these lots. And the applicant shall submit as-built drawings for the road, any stormwater infrastructure that there might be. So that's example motion 1. Example motion 2 would be to deny it based on some finding that something doesn't comply with our subdivision standards. Or 3 would be to defer it. Take note that there are requirements in state law about deferrals, unnecessary deferrals, excessive deferrals, can cause the plat to be approved automatically after 60 days. And that concludes my staff presentation. As I mentioned, I think Mr. Morrell is in attendance here this evening, can speak to the specifics of the project.
Okay, well, why don't we have the people who want to speak to the project, and then Mr. Morrell can respond after the fact.
Sir, the first person signed up to speak is Steve Collier.
I didn't even have a problem here about that, but that's okay. Steve Collier, 153 Bradwell Road, been there 6.5 years. Really like the area. I'm not really impressed with this plant area, so nobody that lives there is. The biggest concern that I have is the road. I live on the road where there's wide, it's 20 feet wide, which is, when I see a big truck coming in, I still kind of feel like that, but you can get down there. There's a culvert right before this proposed development is, and the pavement over the culvert is 16 feet wide. And everybody's going to be in this development has to go over that thing in and out. It's like, it just seems to me ridiculous to do something like that. There was another proposal a year and a half, 2 years ago, for people wanted to develop that. And they were talking about putting a bridge over the Bryce Lane and having another entrance exit to that area. And that never went anywhere, but something, in my opinion, anyway, we just need better roads to get in and out, so people don't run over, don't get run off the road, or, I don't know what else to say. It's just that I wish the road get approved more before they do things like this. I'd rather not see this happen, but I know you can't stop progress. I just wish they'd make progress better for everybody there, not just the people that could move in. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, the next person signed up is Ken Wentworth.
Thank you, I appreciate the chance to speak. My name is Ken Wentworth. I live at 399 Brandon Mill Road. Without going over too many things we've discussed before, I'm trying to take a viewpoint that we've discussed the width of the road, we've discussed the one way in, one way out, problems with safety vehicles coming in. I have an elderly mother-in-law who lives with me. We've had to call an ambulance on her. But these things we've discussed before, and they don't seem to have too much impact on decisions that have been made. We have 2 developments on our street right now that are going in. The last one is the Shaw Brothers that was previously approved, and then prior to that on Millbrook Way, which is took a little different approach here, and I'll try to go through this quick. I know there's a time limit, and I have a story I'd like to tell you, two stories I'd like to tell you. My wife and I took a drive, and we went out past the Civic Center on Albert Gallatin Way, and to be honest with you, I was amazed at what I found out there. There's a very large complex, which I'm sure you're aware of, on either side of the street. Nexus Corporation is out there. They have one side townhomes, on the other side homes, a gated community, looks like a adult community that's going in out there. So they're both very large. My point in bringing this up is all these things that I'm going to mention to you affect Highway 31. That's traffic for 31. Coming back in, there's a Longford Farms, which are good old homes, has been approved to go in on Albert Gallatin. There's commercial lots for sale between the Dollar General Store and the Civic Center. Those are up for sale right now. As I'm sure you know, they're finishing up a very large Circle K at the corner of Albert Gallatin and 31. If you make a left there going towards Brenham Mill Road, well, excuse me, if you go back a little bit towards town where Stony Brook is the big home on the corner, Thompson Farms is building. They're on their 3rd Street with townhomes back in there. And my understanding is that on the corner of Airport and 31, where they're excavating gravel on that corner, I've been told, and I'm not 100% sure, you know better, that when he's done mining that, it's going to be a apartment complex going in there, or I think a store tried to go in there at one point. So once again, we have more congestion that's going on 31. 2:30 this afternoon, my wife and I tried to come out of that little street there by Stony Brook and sat there for several minutes just trying to make a right-hand turn going up 31. Bella Vista, when you get up out 31, at the little rise right there past Scully's, I think it's called, the bar right there in the little Catholic church. If you get up there, there's a development on the hill up there. 29 homes are going in there. That's called Bella Vista. Going down towards Oak Hill on the right-hand side, there's a very large area that has not recently been developed, but they cleared the land. Last, at least a year ago, they cleared it, and they put that orange construction and drainage around it. It butts right up to the Oak Hill development that's in there now on the right as you're going out. Of course, we have Facebook that went in, that affects 31. And then we have Crestview on the left, which is down by Shea Creek. There's homes being built in there for sale. On my street right now is the Shell Brothers, the landing that has already been approved, as well as the Millbrook Farm. So I appreciate your patience. Let me just tell you real quick. My personal experience was I was coming from Westmoreland about 2:30 in the afternoon. Coming up a couple miles back, I noticed there was a very large cement truck behind me, and he was quite a ways behind me. And as I was driving these slight inclines, I noticed that he was keeping up with me. And I thought, boy, that guy's really moving. So I kept a close eye on him, and when I got fairly close to my street, I put my blinker on, and I was observing in my rearview mirror. And he kept up with me the whole time, but he was quite a ways back. And so I came to a stop. I turned my wheel to go left on the Brenham Mill Road, and I'm watching him in my rearview mirror, and I've got constant traffic coming towards me. I couldn't make a left-hand turn safely. He kept coming, and I realized that the last minute that he wasn't stopping. And this is one of those cement trucks that have a small cab up front and a big tumbler over the top. Big truck. Anyway, my response was at the last minute that he's going to hit me. You're going to see me, he's going to hit me. I straightened my wheel. I stabbed the accelerator to the floor. And about the time I had reacted, he blew by me on the right. He never slowed down. He swerved past me and was gone. So at that point, I thought, well, we're gonna have a heart-to-heart discussion. So I followed him up the highway, or up to Airport Road, and where he was in the turn lane, I got out and I crawled up on his cab and I said, dude, he almost hit me. I said, did you see me? He said, I'm so sorry, I never saw you. I never saw you. I don't know what he was doing, but he kept apologizing. And I thought to myself, if it wasn't for the good Lord riding with me, he would have punted me into oncoming traffic, and I'd have been a pinball bouncing around. So my point is telling you all this, and I appreciate your patience, is that I believe that Highway 31 that we're playing Russian roulette. Somebody's going to die on that highway. It wasn't me that time, but somebody's going to die on that highway. Coming in tonight for this meeting, there was 226 cars between Brown Mill Road when I got on the highway, coming out of town at 4:30 roughly. There were 226 cars came past me the other way. We have a traffic problem, and like I said, I'm afraid somebody's going to get killed, and hopefully we can do something about it. So I am opposed to this. I think my street has bared enough brunt, given enough pound of flesh for all the developments that's going in around here. I don't know when enough is enough, but we love where we live. We love the cattle that are around us. We love the horses that are around us, and I know people need somewhere to live, but I think there's enough land that we don't have to fill in all the little streets and areas, to satisfy people. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, the last person we had signed up to speak is CJ Burrow.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, David. Commissioners, thank you for having me tonight. I'll get to addressing some of the concerns of the folks who have spoke, but I'll bring up some of the items that we discussed last month whenever we had the concept plan up here. As I mentioned last month, this plan has gone through several iterations to get to this point, and I think that we have worked really closely with Mr. Klein in trying to come up with a development that meets the needs of all those involved, kind of meets in the middle, so to speak. As you move further away from 31, we are getting less dense. I think the units, the amount of acres per unit on the land in Branham was roughly 2.86. This is closer to the 3.4 acre range on this development. One of the main topics of discussion, and I'm not going to get into everything that we discussed last month, but one of the main topics of discussion up until this point was obviously the traffic study. We went through and got updated traffic counts while school was in session. That's normally a requirement whenever you get traffic counts done. So they were taken while school was in session. And what the recommendations came back is exactly what Josh stated. There was a southbound left turn lane, a northbound right turn lane, and then for us to work with the county engineer and the roadway superintendent on a typical section along our property frontage. I will say that the one of the items that was already warranted prior to us going through the traffic study, or at least the results that the traffic consultant noticed, is that the right turn lane northbound on 31 is already warranted. So theoretically, without this development at all, it would be up to the county to implement that right turn lane, design it, send it out for bid, and construct it, because it theoretically is a safety issue. In this case, you're able to get the right turn lane constructed with development, which is normally how it occurs in Tennessee, because it's pay-as-you-go state, unless you get some kind of grant, unless you get some kind of funding at the state level. I can't, the only road in the county that I can think of that has been most recently built with the grant was Greenlee Boulevard in the city of Gallatin. It's not a TDOT road, but it was built using state funds. And that rarely occurs. So cities and counties are left to implement a lot of these things that are already warranted on their own, and sometimes it's not able to happen. Regardless, like I said, we've gotten the traffic study updated. That was a request from Mr. Sudduth since day one of us resubmitting this plan. We followed through with that. I think that we have, for what is going in, we have a very nice product. We have a builder that builds very nice homes. The soils in the area meet the requirements, and as the soil scientist stated, as I stated last month, the soil scientist said that the soils in this area are some of the best he's seen in the county. So we don't have a problem with soils. We are actively working with Sumner Springs Bethpage on getting the water design for this phase done. Once this is approved, this will go to the next step of them going through full design. A quick update on the development to the west. We just had our pre-con for the full water design on that site this past week. So it takes some time to get through that process once you receive approval on the preliminary plat. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have. I know I came up here last month and y'all had some questions and I answered them, but I think that the implementation of the traffic study and the recommendations provided by the traffic consultant should theoretically address some of the concerns that the folks that got up and spoke before me had as it relates to traffic. Because it allows people that are on 31 a way to get out, away, and around traffic to exit off of the street as opposed to just sitting there waiting on their chance to turn. Like I said, happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Does anybody on the planning commission have any questions? Mr. Issa?
I know they may have said it, did the traffic consultant company say anything about the road where we said that it was said to be maybe 16 feet wide? Did they make any recommendations to widening that?
So the recommendation that I think they did mention that the roadway varied, especially as you got further down Brandon Mill Road. But their third recommendation was for us to work with the county engineer and the highway department to determine what they would require as the typical section that they would want to see on the road. And we are willing to coordinate with those parties throughout this process and as a condition.
I just heard that as one of the concerns from the public comments. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Belcher?
When the landing at Branham was approved, and maybe Josh, this is for you, whoever knows the answer, were improvements required along the frontage of Branham Mill Road? Where, because I drove out there this past weekend and I saw the same thing you did. The city limit stops, and the nice smooth pavement stops, and then you go on to the county road. What I'm wondering is whether or not the stretch in front of the landing at Branham is going to get improved so that when Gregory Downs, if it's approved, improves their road frontage, we don't have a space of crummy road between the two.
I don't recall that there was a condition of approval as far as like a new overlay or any additional width or anything on this section. One thing that just not to correct, but that all this is in the county, all the way to 31. It's totally in the county. What happened was around the time that this development came through, or a little shortly thereafter, the highway department at the time was the previous administration came through and repaved this section of the road up through here and put a little bit of widening on it as well. They added a foot or two of pavement width at that time. Excuse me. Now, as part of this development and this development, I think there's going to be a good bit of road construction traffic using this road. And like you mentioned, I noticed it's deteriorating and that kind of thing. So I would expect that the county engineer and road superintendent, myself, will work with the developer. When they come back with the final plat, we're gonna look at what condition that road is in at that time. And as part of that final plat approval, we may have a surety that we'll want to put in place at that time to re-overlay that road or something like that. Because with all the trucks and that kind of thing that are gonna go through here over the next couple of years, it's gonna be pretty beat up. And so as part of that, we might work with them too, and I'd have to talk with Mr. Boyd, the county engineer as well, but I'm kind of spitball on the go, but as part of that, I don't know if there's a way we might be able to get another foot or two onto the road as well to get it, where it's basically the same as what's going on right here. That would definitely be an idea though.
And where is the culvert? I remember it, but I don't.
That culvert,
On the middle.
is it like right in here?
No,
That's
it's
back
right
over
there.
here. Yeah. And so if I'm remembering correctly, and Mr. Burrow can correct me if I'm wrong, but the culvert, water flows from north to south through here, back down to the Shade Creek. And so part of the discussion on this was, around the discussion about what to do with this culvert at that time was that the development doesn't put any water into it. Basically, because this whole project pretty much drains this way. And so there's no impact that they're putting onto this culvert that would necessarily justify having them rip it out, put a new one in, or upsize it, or whatever it might be. Your improvements need to be commensurate with your impact, essentially, is kind of the principle that we have on a lot of this stuff. Hence the road improvements that we're talking about and that kind of thing. There may need to be a project there at some point though to look at that culvert. It's a really old culvert, probably is undersized at this point. I think it's just an old galvanized pipe, I think is basically what it is. I might be wrong about that, but there may need to be a box or something like that installed there at some point in the future.
Any other questions?
I know we keep talking about the road 16 feet in some places and 18 feet in some places and even wider. The road is 16 feet at that culvert. If there's an emergency vehicle that needs to come through, how in the world, if there's two vehicles, is this a safety issue? Because if it's a safety issue, I have major problems. Because from my understanding, what I've seen something out there, I mean, I don't think you can widen that where that culvert is without completely removing that. I mean, is there even a room? That's my question.
The culvert area I'm really familiar with. It is about 16 feet of asphalt there, and it drops off both sides. It drops off into Steve Brooks to the north, and there's riprap there. And then it drops off 8, maybe 10 feet on your side. Yeah, so that's going to be, I don't want to pull any punches here. That's going to be some substantial design work that Mr. Boyd and Josh and CJ you're going to have to do, I believe, because that is definitely the scariest part of that road, especially when some of the farm equipment is coming back towards the dead end. And with this development here, there will be lots of concrete trucks, and so it would make sense for that to be resolved sooner than later on the development.
And if I remember right, part of the discussion on this project, this one as well, was that I don't think that the traffic that leaves this site, I don't think it crosses that culvert. Basically, I think the culvert is back this way.
Right.
And so it was kind of left, not necessarily unaddressed, it was discussed at some length last time, but when looking at it, this development's not putting any water into this situation, and nobody's going this way, not often anyway. However, with this development, you do have a situation where people are going to be coming out, and they will be crossing that area, and so that gets into the question of, I know that the project representative doesn't want to hear this, but I mean, that's when you start looking at, if there's an issue there, does that need to be addressed as part of this as well? It's not a cheap fix. That's something that would be a significant investment.
Yeah, I don't want, anybody to have any surprises financially. The other thing, CJ, is there is a major drainage after the first curve of Brandon Mill Road. It comes down along the old railroad right away. And there's actually an old pond
Yeah.
that fills up every time it rains. Does that drain to, I don't remember it going under the railroad right away.
I believe it actually does. That pond, we actually have called out on the plans. We have a buffer around it. We're staying away from it. That portion of the site drains through the railroad right away, through the two 5-acre lots that are on the landing at Branham, and then ultimately gets into the creek. But that is the farthest, most north extent of the property. I'd say 95% of the rest of the property drains south and northwest to the creek. None of that water goes back under Brandon Mill or to any other property. It's basically self-contained on both of these projects.
Yeah, and I know it's not your problem, but the water did flow over Brandon Mill Road on this last big rain that we had. I was pretty surprised because I'd never seen that before. The one other thing that I wanted to understand completely is, in talking about the highway, if I understood you right, you and the developer believe that's a responsibility of the county to take care of that right turn lane?
Well, what I was stating is, if this development didn't happen, and the county wanted to go and do basically a safety audit on their roadways, and they wanted to hire their own consultant to do a traffic study for intersections throughout the county, this would show up as an issue. And it would show up stating that the right turn lane is warranted today, without putting any other traffic on it whatsoever. So, that being said, with us obviously having the traffic study updated and taking into account these 32 lots, it's automatically going to warrant the right turn lane because it's already warranted without the 32 lots. That's all I was saying.
Oh, okay. I understand that. All right. I don't have any more questions.
One other thing, because you just went past the architecture. One thing that came up during the presentation was the front load garage. I believe all of this was typical architecture that was given at the very front end. Usually in this process, it takes a while for architecture to get to the point where it's final. But so far, all of the homes on the landing at Branham and the ones on this one are supposed to be side loaded, not front loaded.
That helps in clarification. Thank you.
Would you repeat that last comment?
Yes. So one of the comments that was, I believe, brought up during Mr. Seva's presentation was that the architecture that's shown shows front-load garages. All of the architecture and the site plans that have been submitted for the development to the west, the landing at Branham, and the ones that are supposed to be submitted for this one are supposed to be side-load garages.
Any other questions? I don't, this is highly unordinary, but one of the speakers previously wanted to speak again. Is that possible, or is that out of order? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, CJ, appreciate it. Well, we have 3 options as example motions. Yes, Commissioner Swin.
Can we add more conditions to this?
Absolutely.
I would like to add a condition to repair the culvert to make it 18 feet. And, there's another thing, I should have written it down. And we're going to do the left and right hand lane and turning lane on 31. And I would like to add those 2 conditions and on 31. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the Highway 31 improvements were already, they were already, those, that's not negotiable, that's already on there.
Now, go ahead, please.
If we can add those two conditions, I'm fine with number one, with A, B, C, D, and then E and F. What I just added.
Okay, the other question that you and I spoke the other day on the phone, there, at DeShay Creek, there are turning pockets, both going north and south. And would this include keeping that center lane all the way up to this?
Well, so the design on this has not been done yet. So we know that there's gonna be, you know, per the traffic study, there's 100-foot turn lanes, you know, that are called for with a 100-foot stack and that kind of thing. What it's gonna look like has got to be approved by TDOT. So this is TDOT's road. So TDOT, if you want something that's something TDOT won't allow, you can't do it. You can't do it. And so what's going to have to happen is the design on this will have to be drawn up. Mr. Morrell or some other subcontractor will do a design that will be submitted over to the TDOT Region 3 office. And the TDOT, and of course, we go to the county engineer office. We'll look at it too. And so we'll have opportunity to review and they comment, and it goes over to the regional office. Once they get an approved plan, then they go through TDOT's process for construction and obtaining any permits that they need to work within the right of way.
Yeah, I would just want to say for the record, if you go from, if you're going towards Gallatin, you have a left turn pocket, and then you close it and open it up again, it's.
Well, TDOT is certainly, that's a high-speed roadway, right? So 55 mile an hour speed limit through there. TDOT is gonna, but they have pretty stringent design standards on how that has to be done. And so they're not gonna accept anything else than that.
Okay, I think Mr. Morrell has a comment.
I was just gonna follow up to that. I mean, the process to go through TDOT is pretty arduous and lengthy, and Josh is correct. The design guidelines for that roadway are pretty substantial, and we are required to follow them. With the speed limit being 55 in that area, the approach tapers and the bay tapers for all of the left and right turn lanes are going to be fairly significant and long, just because of the speed. Because you have distance requirements you have to meet, you have sight distance and horizontal and vertical curve requirements, all kinds of things that you have to look into in the design of that. At this point, we believe we have the right of way there just because TDOT already has the right of way, so I don't think we have any right of way concerns, but we're just gonna have to coordinate with TDOT and go through that process. We still have to submit the plans to county engineer and to Sumner County, but TDOT has the final say on what those look like and how they get implemented.
And we're in the meetings too, so
Yeah.
they do the meetings via Teams usually, and sometimes they'll even have at least it used to when I worked there, they'll have an on-site meeting as well, sometimes depending on the side. But something like this, they might not, but if they do, the county staff is invited to all those meetings, and we have an opportunity to provide input.
TDOT's done a good job recently at including the local municipalities in the processes that they have in their design.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, you made a motion for one, A
Give me a
through.
second or another idea. Number one, with A, B, C, D, add E and F, which is fixing the area where it's only 16 feet where the culvert is, and also putting in the turning lanes on the right and the left side of 30.
Okay, we had a motion, and a second from Mr. Issa. Question?
Sorry for maybe this isn't protocol. If we add the widening the culvert from 16 to 18 feet, can we also include a time window for when that has to be done?
You just have mentioned, you can amend on that.
Prior to, what our expectation on that, the way we typically do these things is that's done before the final plat comes back to be recorded. And so before they start selling lots and getting the permits in this development, that's when all that stuff needs to be done. So the improvements in 31, replacing that culvert, is what I understand, y'all be saying, replacing that culvert and getting an 18-foot cross section there. Those are improvements since they're there, building the road, doing all those things, that's the time to take care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And not later on when people are moving into the development and all those things. That's what it's
I
like.
do like the specific word, so if you don't even do that timeline,
Yeah,
the timeline.
yeah, include a time window for widening the culvert from 16 to 18 feet. Which I guess would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, prior to the recording of the final plat.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
He needs a second for that. So I said, you are awesome. And
I have a question on that. I'm just wondering if it should be prior to breaking ground because of the equipment that will cross that culvert. It's just a question on my part. I mean,
They're gonna have to keep the road open, and so that they'll have to find some alternative there. And so traffic will they'll have to figure out some solution there. If there's somebody that has to get back there to access the property,
yeah,
the road will have to be kept open. And so time will be of the essence when they do that project. And it might not be that, and relatively speaking, involved, that they put a box over there, whatever it is that they have to do.
yeah, okay.
Right.
But that'll be a design that you and Marshall.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'll be talked about during the pre-con, how that's all gonna be handled and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so yes, Mr. Sidler.
Yeah, just one clarification, Josh, did you say you can't even issue a building permit until all this is complied with anyway, correct?
That's right. Yes, sir.
So that's your fail safe, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. That's the way we do, that's not the, there's nothing about this that's new or unique. Every project that has infrastructure in the county, this is the way we're required to do it. Pretty much since I've been in the county, we implemented rules several years ago to cut out all the stuff where they get all the permits and then they have to do the improvements later on, you know. And so we hold the permits to make sure we get what we need to count.
Okay, so do we have to vote on the amendment? We do have to. So we have a motion to amend and a second from Commissioner Holmes. So go ahead, Kathy.
Commissioner Holmes? Commissioner Miller? Mr. Williams? Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
Mr. Strong?
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment passes, and now the main motion we have, was it you, Mr. Issa, that gave the second? You seconded it, okay, so we have, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. Commissioner Holmes? Commissioner Miller? Mr. Williams? Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
And Mr. Strong?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 2.
Yes, sir.
Final plat, it's all yours, Josh.
Yes, sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is Rolling Roark Estates final plat. This is 5 residential building lots across 6.97 acres. This is located on Butler Bridge Road, just southeast, I guess, of the former city limits. The overall property contains 117.5 acres, but the portion that's being subdivided is a little less than 7. It's zoned rural residential. The surveyor is Richard Graves, project engineer on this one, Streamlit Design. I have White House Utilities as the water service provider. Can't remember if that's actually right. It is. Okay, so they're confused by the utility providers around here. You think right outside Portland, it will be Portland, but it's White House. Then the lots here to be served by individual septic tanks. So this is the farm here overall, and this is the area right here. This will be subdivided, this little piece right here. There's a sketch plat on this one that was turned in back in May of 2023. This is the sketch that was approved at that time. A preliminary plat was subsequently approved, and you might notice that on the sketch of the preliminary, there was 7 lots that was proposed. I think they finalized soil work, and had some other questions that came up about that. And I think they had to combine some lots basically and eliminate a couple. So 7 lots were approved as part of the preliminary plat. They reduced it to 5 for the final plat, and so what you see is there for the final. So less intense than what was initially proposed. Utilities and fire protection on this one. This is one point that might take some explanation. So this piece of property has a grandfathered or vested status. And so the preliminary plat for it was approved back in June of 2023, which was prior to the county amending the subdivision regulations to require fire hydrants the way that we do now. At that time, what was allowed was you could make a dedication to the volunteer fire department for roughly the amount that was being charged for a fire hydrant at that time by White House Utilities, which back then was $3,000. The planning commission did away with all that in September of 2023, but the preliminary plat was approved in June 2023. And so it would, per state law, it would still be subject to those requirements. I'll show what those are here in just a second. But generally, one fire hydrant will be required for this development per the county subregs. White House Utilities says that it can't be done here at this location. There's an 8-inch line, but there's not pressure there. Per the current regulations, what would ensue would be a denial for this plat, per the current regulations, because they're not able to provide the hydrant. But per the requirements that were in place at that time, they were able to provide that dedication to the volunteer fire department in order to satisfy the fire protection requirements. So this is the county's regulations that were in place at that time. Again, this was replaced in September of 2023. And this is, see what it says here basically is if fire hydrants couldn't be installed back then, a dedication could be made to the volunteer fire department, or some other solution could be arrived at to satisfy the requirements. The new planning commission came in and that was one of the things that the new county commission, planning commission wanted to zero in on as something to change. And so that verbiage was taken out again in September 2023. So this development being subject to those previous requirements, this is the receipt that was provided for the donation that was made to the volunteer fire department. We received that today from Mr. Graves on behalf of the applicant. This project fronts along Butler Ridge Road, which is a collector roadway requiring 150-foot lot widths, and so all these lots are at least 150 feet wide, so that requirement has been met. They did turn in construction plans reflecting that 7-lot configuration. Those have been approved already some time ago. We are going to need a revised plan set showing the 5-lot configuration, and that'll need to be turned into a T-deck as well. They're going to need notice of coverage for T-deck before we can issue permits on this property. This is actually in the rural place type, and so this is a project that would be required to have 100,000 square foot lots per the regulations that have not yet been adopted, and those can be considered as part of this application at this time. Next steps, following final plat approval, they'll need to get revised construction plans to the county engineer. Any permits from TDEC would have to be obtained, record the subdivision plat, and then they'll be able to obtain county permits for site construction, so building permits, land service permits, and also septic permits from the state. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen. Example 1 is to approve a final plat for Roller Rock Estates with the following conditions. The first being obtaining, again, construction plan approval from the county engineer, TDEC approval for notice of coverage, and then C has been satisfied at this time. Again, we did receive the dedication to the volunteer fire department that was allowable when this was initially approved. 2 would be to deny this based on finding in non-compliance with the county's regulations, and 3 would be to defer it. And again, there's some state law requirements that come into effect there. That concludes my presentation. I don't believe we had anybody signed up to speak on this one, but Mr. Graves is in attendance, the land surveyor for this one.
Any questions? Mr. Strong?
Yes, just to confirm that falls under White House Utility District area, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's fine. Okay, the next thing is, you said, I guess I need a clarification. Is that when it received preliminary approval and fell under the previous code, there's been a significant change. That plat was changed from 7 lots to 5 lots. That's a significant change. And because of that I would think I probably need a clarification that pretty much clears out that preliminary approval.
No, sir.
It does not.
No, sir. So the Vested Property Rights Act was something, to be honest with y'all, it was written by builders and was adopted by the state legislature back in 2014. And so, I was working in city government at the time, and was on a committee that opposed it. But the Vested Property Rights Act, I believe, calls out some specific circumstances for things that don't constitute a lapse of vested property right. And one of those is a reduction in lot count. An increase in lot count is something that would cause the vested property rights to lapse because you've increased the threshold of what you've been approved to do. But if you come in with less, you still are grandfathered in, you're still vested per state law.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, sir. They thought of everything on that one.
Other questions? Commissioner Miller?
I have a question, it's probably more for legal than it is for anyone else, so it doesn't get skewed and twisted. So I have notes, very organized here, from the planning commission of June 27th of 2023, when this first came to us. Is there a time limit of something, when you bring did they bring a preliminary plat first? Did they bring us, back then we still had sketch plats. So they brought a sketch plat, then a preliminary plat. So that was, and I don't have on here whether it was passed or failed, but it's the only one I didn't write. I did have a note on here that says 1 fire hydrant required and White House Utility District can't provide. And then in capital letters, I have fire hydrants. And then an X on giving money to, but we changed that, thank God. But I was a big advocate of that. So if my question, I guess, to legal is, because you approved a sketch plat and you approved a preliminary plat, they haven't broken ground, correct? So is there a time limit on how long your approval is good for? And 2, if your rules change before you get that final plat, can you require them to go by your current rules?
If I'm not mistaken, I think Josh is actually more versed in this than I am, but with the vested property issue that some litigation has occurred to where it's been decided in favor of the development of the property, not the regulatory authority. And in this instance, I believe this would be approved.
You vest for 3 years following a preliminary plat approval. And then once you obtain permits and break ground, you vest for an additional 2.
That's state law.
It's Vested Property Rights Act of 2014. Maybe a little off on the breaking ground part, but it's definitely a 3-year approval. And our subdivision regulations mirror that with, once you get a preliminary plat approved, you have 3 years to go to construction, basically, or it expires.
Other questions? Josh, I have a question. With the $30 million water project, I would imagine White House is going to increase their pressure in that area, or?
I can't speak to that, the project specific, outcomes on this, I don't know. I don't know. It may, I know there probably will be areas of the county that will have higher pressure than did before, and will certainly be areas of the county that have, new water lines and that kind of thing. But I don't know whether this specific property would be benefited in that way.
Mr. Chairman, I can address that. The regional water project for Sumner County does not include the White House Utility District area. It only increases, it includes Portland, Gallatin as a provider of water, CSB Utility District, and then indirectly Westmoreland. So White Gas Utility District is not involved at all at the current time with the regional project.
Thank you, Mr. Stroll. So is this a high area that it wouldn't, that it doesn't have proper pressure?
Mr. Graves may know more, and talking with White House Utilities about why this particular property doesn't, because it's got an 8-inch line, which normally is adequate for fire protection and that kind of thing. I don't know the issue as far as, it may just be that they need a new tank at some point in the future in the vicinity or something like that.
Well, it's probably a moot point anyway, so I won't chase it down. Get it on the next one. Okay, so we have example motions. Would anybody care to make a motion?
One with conditions, although I'm not happy about the fire hydrant situation, as a note.
Well, okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Assistant seconds it. I have a question. We don't have an option here because of the grandfather clause, right?
Well, I mean, we all could go home and rob gas stations on our way back, right? There's always an option, but I mean, I think, but that's essentially what, it's, denying something that has a vested property rights act. That's what the legislature said you'd be doing, basically. And so, there's no, I will say there's no rational grounds. There's no grounds, not regulatory grounds to issue a denial on this project.
Yeah.
So it's a grandfather invested.
So we could defer for 2 months and then it would pass as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Kathy, go ahead and do the roll call.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Holmes? Commissioner Miller? Mr. Williams? Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
Mr. Straw?
Yes.
Okay, passes 5-1. Item number 3. All yours, Josh.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This last item on the regular agenda is re-subdivision of Lot 2 of Walking Horse LLC Estates. It's a lot width variance or waiver. You guys saw this one at the last planning commission meeting, Mr. Chairman. It was deferred at the May 2024 meeting. What this is it's a 2-lot minor subdivision, or 2-lot subdivision, totaling 3.67 acres total. They're requesting a variance or a waiver. It's a same way of saying the same thing, variance or waiver. I use those terms interchangeably. From county requirements related to lot widths on a collector street. So the collector street is New Deal Potts Road. This project was platted to have two road accesses, one on Belcher Hollow and the other on New Deal Potts Road. This property is owned rural residential. Highland Volunteer Fire Department is owning this property. Project surveyor is Brian Reichenheimer. I believe he's here in Tennessee tonight, as our representatives from Highland Volunteer Fire. One thing to note, but I kind of, not to limit debate or anything like that on this, so you guys can ask any questions and we can go follow me fast if y'all want to follow. But the question really that is before the planning commission tonight is not whether a fire station can be placed at this location. It can. The Board of Zoning Appeals issued a special exception on the property and essentially authorized the use by stating and finding that it meets the zoning requirements. So the use is really not in question. A site plan will follow at some point in the future to actually, approve the building's construction and all those things. Really, the narrow question that is before the planning commission at this meeting is whether the planning commission is going to allow this lot to be subdivided as they want to do it. That's the question, because the planning commission has to grant a variance or a waiver in order for them to do that. So this is the subdivision plat that turned in. You can see, actually I'll zoom in a little bit here. There we go. You can see the lot, as I mentioned, it's about 3.5 acres. They're proposing to divide it into two, with that'd be lot 2A and lot 2B here. This other lot would be 2.39 acres, I believe, based on the last meeting, the conversation. The intent is for them to sell this property and recoup some of their investment. And the fire hall will be located here on this piece of property here. Fronting along New Deal Potts Road, which, as I mentioned, is a collector roadway, 20 feet in width. So access to New Deal Potts Road at this location, again, it's a rural minor collector for our major thoroughfare plan. The county subdivision regulations encourage developers to try to find some other way, if at all possible, to avoid direct cuts on our arterial and collector streets if they have another means of access. So per the county subdivision regulations, the minimum lot width is 150 feet. If sole access is derived from a collector street. However, if a secondary access is provided, the minimum is 50 feet, which is the minimum for any lot in the county. But if they don't have a second way in and out, essentially, or another access, then it's 150 feet. And the intent of that is to cut down on the number of drive cuts you have up and down all these roads. So the proposed lot width, though, that's proposed is 79.33 feet for lot 2A, which would derive sole access to New Deal Potts Road. So that's the variance that they're requesting. They're requesting for this lot to be 79.33 feet wide, and the regulations call for it to be 150 feet wide. The alternative of adding that second ingress and egress across lot 2B on the Belcher Hollow Road would make it unnecessary, and would add an additional emergency point of access to the facility. We do understand that will impact the marketability of the lot, and they want to sell that lot. And two, they've indicated that lot, it would be problematic trying to drive fire trucks and that kind of thing through it. It's pretty rugged terrain, and so it might not function well for that use anyway. This is the county's major thoroughfare plan, just showing that the little yellow roads are our minor collectors, and New Deal Potts is one of them. Our subdivision regulations, what it says is in no case shall lots driving sole access from an arterial or collector street have widths less than 200 and 150 feet respectively, so 150 feet on the collector road. And so I this is a lot of text, I'm sorry about that, but I extracted this straight from our subdivision regulations so you guys can see what, and I really want to spend a minute just talking about what our subdivision regulations say about granting waivers, because it is very specific and it does require findings to be made when you grant a waiver. And so what it says here is so for findings, if the planning commission essentially finds that the full enforcement of the regulations are going to impose a hardship on the property owner without public benefit or without significant benefit, is what it says, then a waiver may be granted, provided that it's not going to have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of the regulations. So that's a really key term right there, nullifying the intent and purpose of the regulations. And so, and it's one of these A through E's here. The question you need to ask when you're being asked to grant any variance, any waiver or variance, is this something that can come up on another piece of property? Is it something that applies to a whole lot of property across the county? If it does, granting that variance is probably not something that is appropriate. However, if you're dealing with a unique situation, if it's something that comes up one time, you've never seen this before, it's hard to imagine somebody asking, making the same request again, a waiver might be appropriate. And so what it says is the planning commission shall make written findings based on the evidence presented to it in each case that the granting of the waiver won't be detrimental to the public, so you're not creating a safety issue where the property is located. And on this one, I think an argument can be made that this is an existing road frontage. This is not being carved out of another piece of property, it's already there. Nothing is changing along the road. B, the waiver must be harmonious and consistent with the general purpose of subdivision regulations. And this is important, notwithstanding the fact that certain aspects of the regulations may be waived as applied to the particular property and are not applicable generally to other property. And so again, really think about that, not applicable generally to other property. And so on this one, is the situation you have with the volunteer fire department wanting to locate a new fire station in an area, a neighborhood or an area. Is that something that you're going to see come up where another variance would be required? Or is that a unique situation based on this line? C, because of the particular physical surrounding shape, topographic conditions of the property involved, the owner is going to suffer a hardship as a result, as distinguished from an inconvenience if we apply the letter of these regulations. And so that's where you're looking at, is this going to make it impossible, or is this going to impose an inconvenience on the property owner? That was a little bit, this one is a little bit more ambiguous on this one, because they have enough property to satisfy the regulations at this time. And so that was a little bit more ambiguous. The waiver shall be consistent with the provisions of the comp plan, major thoroughfare plan, and zoning resolution. In this case, it's consistent. There's no inconsistencies there. It's a subdivision regulations exception. And so what that's saying too is, are they asking you for a deviation to the subdivision regulations that's also going to violate the zoning code? If that's the case, you can't approve it, right? And then E, is an alternative providing equal or greater compliance not available? And so again, that's another one that's a little bit ambiguous. And so those are the things you want to think about when you're looking to maybe grant a variance or being asked to grant a variance. And I kind of restated these here. Is it going to result in an unsafe condition? If yes, then the waiver is not supportable. Is the waiver intent consistent with the overall intent of the subdivision regulations? Yes, and it is supportable. Is it related to a unique or particular physical characteristic that you can't apply elsewhere? If yes, then it's supportable. Would it be consistent with the regulations, zone code, and comp plan? If yes, it is supportable. Will strict compliance result in an undue hardship without public benefit? If yes, then it is supportable. And then last, is the applicant proposing an alternative that will meet the intent? And if yes, then the waiver is supportable. And so you need to answer in the affirmative on these, except for the first one. If it's creating an unsafe condition, then that's not supportable. But those are just questions to think about when you get asked for a variance or a waiver. And so next steps on this, if this waiver variance, we're going to call this approved, the subdivision plat can be approved administratively by the county staff. And what they'll need to do next is then, as I was kind of saying at the beginning, that's when the site plan will be turned in. And that's when they'll need to show the design of the building, landscaping, the driveway, all those things. And based on the size of the building, if it's 3,000 square feet or more, it needs to come back to the planning commission. Less than that, it can be approved administratively. If y'all tell me here today you want to see it, you want it to come back to the planning commission, we won't process it administratively. We'll put it on the next agenda whenever they turn it in. That's just not a requirement. The staff has to approve it administratively. And after that site plan is approved, it gets the final approval from the county engineer and myself where we sign it, then the building and land service permits can be obtained. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen, and what these are is to find that all county requirements related to waivers are met, and to approve the request, or to find that all the requirements are not met and to deny it. And so, as I mentioned, Mr. Reichner, the land surveyor is here, and folks from Highland Volunteer Fire Department are here as well.
Nobody's speaking to accept. Okay. Mrs. Cheryl.
Question, did we verify there are no property owners here to speak tonight? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
No property owners are here to speak tonight?
No, sir, nobody signed up.
No, I don't believe we had anybody last time either, is that correct?
There was if y'all remember the one lady that had questions about access on the Belcher Hollow Road, there were some questions about whether an access was gonna be provided, and, of course it's not, and so, if I recall right, she was happy with it at that time. Yes, sir.
Then my question, Mr. Chairman, looking through this and everything, and this would be really directed to the fire chief, with the estimate of the bid. With the limited frontage on the property, is there enough room on the property, lot 2A, to actually turn the vehicle around and get it back in the shelter? Or do they have to back it in off the road, back into the shelter?
I think it would be appropriate to have the chief or the engineer or both respond to that question, because I know that's one of my questions, and Mr. Belcher as well.
Depends on their,
I think everybody's got a question, okay?
Hello, I'm Captain Young with Holland Volunteer Fire Department. To answer that question there, the way the property, I don't know if you're able to see it, the way the property, the next one, Josh, I believe. Yeah, the proposed, yes. So if you look, okay. So our fire trucks are roughly 8 feet wide. We've actually already, before this came before y'all, we already had the county give us a driveway permit, which is required anyways. So we needed access to be able to care for the property, push on, get the property ready for whatever the case may be. And access off of Belcher Hollow is not available right now. When you come down, it actually goes downhill till about this point. And then it goes about a 15% grade up to the top. So that's why the thought was to try to go here. So right here, we're gonna have a 25-foot entrance. It's currently 20 foot, but we started with the 20 just because of construction entrance and to be able to get lawn equipment or whatever that case may be onto the property. But what will actually happen is whichever way the apparatus is coming in, it will turn onto the lot. And most of this is going to be parking lot and turnaround. So once the apparatus gets in, it will be able to turn around and back into the station that will be located approximately right there.
Commissioner Miller.
is there gonna be a way to go around the back of the building and pull through or everything?
No, ma'am. One thing is the cost of us being a volunteer department, we couldn't afford the extended cost to have pull-through bays. That's what we call it. It's just, it would be basically what you're talking about is a pull-through bay, and the finances just aren't there. So all of our stations currently are the same way, we turn around and back in. That's how all of our stations currently are.
So when you're backing in, you will not be blocking the road?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, we'll be turning around in this location right here. It kills me because when you're looking at it on a little screen, it looks like that property's tiny, but I can guarantee that there's plenty of room to turn around the apparatus around and back in.
I have a question for Josh as well. A normal entrance, I know there's a minimum requirement of how, like a driveway, obviously it's not 25 feet, but what is your normal for like a residential lot? What is your normal?
We don't, our regulations don't spell out, because the stuff we deal with out in the county is so broad. So we don't necessarily have a county standard for driveways, but if we want to, we could ask Marshall what the city of Hendersonville is, for example. That just gives me a frame of reference. That's not saying it's the right thing.
Yeah, for a typical, like a fire station, there's ability, like a commercial driveway, you'd have, one lane going in, one lane going out, and about 10 to 11 feet wide, maybe 12 feet wide, depending on how.
And that's residential?
Well, residential would be a little different. residential driveways, like Josh said, it ranges in width, but typically it'd be 10 feet wide for residential driveway. Yeah. It'd be a little bit wider for commercial driveway, it'd be a little bit wider.
And I made a note last month when this got deferred, I just put on your meeting where there was one way in and one way out. But that's really not the case if you can turn around, is that correct?
That's correct. And if you don't mind, the main reason we wanted to access on Newdale Paul's Road is Belcher Hollow is an extremely narrow one-lane road, dead-end road. And like I said, the side here that we actually own, it is doable to build a driveway if somebody just per se wanted to purchase that second lot. It is doable, but it's not really feasible for a fire truck, especially if we're in an emergency situation pulling in and out on the Belcher Hollow and then on the Newdale Pots. When the safest, most efficient, and quickest route for us to get to the scene of an emergency is right on the Newdale Pots and get to where we need to go safely.
I appreciate you being here to answer these questions. This is what we were missing last night.
Yeah, and I apologize. I got my dates messed up, and when I spoke with him, I just kept apologizing because I apologize to this body that I had 2 days difference. I thought it was 2 days later than what it actually was, so for that I do apologize.
Mr. Belcher.
I had a couple of concerns through some emails that we've had with some, I know Adam asked some questions. It's my understanding the largest truck you have is about 30 feet long.
Yes, sir. And roughly, our newest apparatus, which is located at our Station 1, is 30 feet. I believe the truck that will be in that station, the new station, is, I want to say it's either 31 to 32 feet bumper to bumper.
I did a little bit of research, looked at the architectural graphic standards and such, and for a 30-foot long vehicle, the inside turning radius to make a 90-degree turn is shown at about 28.5 feet. The road surface is only 20 feet wide. I realize the easement's larger than that.
Right.
So I have a concern whether or not your vehicle will actually be able to make a 90-degree turn.
Now,
Without having to stop, back up, stop.
Oh, correct. I understand. So with our vehicles, it's a little bit different because part of that has to do with wheelbase and where our wheelbases are shorter. Every truck, every apparatus that we've gotten is meant, we purchased with thoughts of being in a rural setting, being able to make tighter turns. We turn into the normal, what were you saying, 11, 12-foot driveways, without having to turn around and back up. And actually, we do have pictures of that truck sitting in the little drive that we've made now, just kind of announcing that we finally found a property to purchase. So yeah, no, there's, with the truck width, length and the wheelbase, our turning radius is much shorter. That, we can actually get that truck in about a 16-foot turn, a driveway, about 16 feet off of Newdale Pots.
And I'm sure there's probably other standards that can be looked at. The one that I found with the 30-foot vehicle had a 20-foot wheelbase.
Yeah.
Citing the 28.5-foot inside.
I think ours is like 15 foot. It's a very short wheelbase. Most of ours have like 8 feet on the front of it, in the front of the tire, and 8 to 10 feet in the back. The wheelbases are rather short. For that reason, those trucks have to be able to get in and out of the driveway. So we're not blocking people, not blocking the roadway when we're on emergencies or any other reason.
My other concern is a safety concern. I actually drove up there this weekend and saw the lot, and actually drove down Belcher Hollow and didn't know there was a road named after me, but with oncoming traffic.
Backing out is rough.
I'm concerned about having, especially emergency vehicles coming onto the road without having ample view, to oncoming traffic, or should I say the oncoming traffic having sufficient view of you guys coming out onto the road.
Understandable. Now, we haven't had any trouble, going from ways. I feel like, personally, I feel like we have sufficient visibility, but I can definitely see where that is a concern. But I feel like, just with my experience, I feel like we're in a really good spot right there.
Well, would it be, I realize this is extra cost, but have you considered putting in a light that would come on and flash or turn red for when you guys need to pull out on an emergency?
We will have, I don't know if it's something the county provides, or I know we've gotten before all of our stations, but there will be signs that state that there's a fire station there.
And we get with the highway department on that kind of sign is something they can have.
I wish they were at all of our stations, to be honest with you. I don't, some of the city departments have those, like you said, the light comes on, and that means, none of our stations have it at this point. I wish they did, but.
Do we have, and I realize it's unfair, but you probably haven't thought about it, any idea how much of an expense that would involve?
Hopefully I do.
Josh, any idea?
The county commission's still working on the budget right now, so I don't know. I don't have any idea what it costs.
I have that concern, with the,
Oh,
I think
sure.
signs are great, but, people don't normally, don't always heed the signs, so.
Well, in reality, we wish our road frontage was as wide as the backside of the property. But I've been a member of this department, this is my 15th year. And this has been a project, they were working on this project before I come to the department, finding land in New York. This is the first thing that we've actually been able to purchase, and get to this point in 20 plus years. So it's not the perfect piece of land, but it's perfect for us, if that makes sense.
I just, like I said, I have a concern, I don't want to create a public hazard, especially with the volunteer fire department involved in it, and it concerns me, the line of sight, on that, so.
Commissioner Miller?
Can you go back to the motions, Josh? I'd like to make a motion for number 1 to approve. Thank you so much for coming, and I commend Harlan Fire Department for going out there and raising the money. I know it took you 20 years, and purchasing this land and not expecting, the taxpayers to do this, and I commend you guys on that.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
And if you, hopefully you can make some decent money on selling that second lot and
It's
get a
what
little
we're-
bit of your money back. So
Thank you so much.
I am for this. If I can just get a second.
I have one question. I understand that the old station is going to be abandoned.
Okay, so to give y'all a small glimpse into the volunteer world, our old station technically is going to be abandoned, but it's a bay in one of the old factories on Highway 76 that the owners let us park at trucking. So it's going to be abandoned for a fire department, but it's part of a warehouse. It's a fix. We have no way to actually secure it. It's been very detrimental. We can't heat it, we can't cool it. We've had trucks broke into, items stolen. Who wants to steal from the volunteer fire department? I promise you people do, especially when there's a scrap yard available. So yes, it will be abandoned, but it's part of a warehouse, so I'm sure they'll just put more blasting in it.
Okay, thank you, I was more curious than anything, so. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Kathy, will you do the roll call?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Holmes? Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Mr. Belcher? And Mr. Straw?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the next thing on the agenda is not an action item, it's just the summary of administrative approvals. These are the minor plat applications, plat amendments. I don't know if there's any minor site plans, but yeah, minor plat amendments that were approved from May 6th until a week or so ago. Just put them in there as an FYI for everybody. Director's update, Mr. Chairman, I don't have much of an update or anything. One thing I did want to mention, as the planning commission knows, last month, the zoning changes were heard by the planning commission, got a positive recommendation, they've gone to legislative for one hearing. In July, they'll go back to legislative, and members of the planning commission can correct me, I believe, y'all rescheduled the July meeting to July 29th, yesterday, this Monday, and so we'll be advertising those changes to be on that agenda. And so those will be on that agenda, and will be voted on at that time by the county commission. Mr. Chairman, the last thing we have on the agenda before the adjournment is under other business. We had a discussion from the folks, the Jacobs Valley preliminary plat was on the agenda last month, and requested to be able to kind of discuss some of the ins and outs of their project with regard to sprinkler systems and that kind of thing particularly. Just a little refresher, I know everybody's heard this and knows all about this, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. The background on this one, 19 residential building lots on 110 acres. The sketch plat for this item, if everybody was remember, was turned in back in April 2023 and was approved at that time. The preliminary plat was then turned in later on in the year, but was withdrawn. So the whole application was withdrawn and basically went away. Came back, resubmitted for the May 21st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, where it was denied by the Planning Commission due to non-compliance with water facilities and fire protection requirements contained in Article 3, Section N, of the county subdivision regulations. And so at that meeting, one of the things that was discussed was the applicant was proposing to be allowed to install residential sprinkler systems in lieu of constructing water line improvements and that kind of thing that would be needed to install hydrants, which are required. This is that preliminary plat. We can return to it if anybody wants to discuss it. I think, not to speak for that, and I think the applicant's perspective on this one, what they communicated to me, they felt that they didn't, their sprinkler system proposal was not well understood during the planning commission meeting. Since there were questions about how they're installed, system specs, and how they're accommodated for water pressure and that kind of thing. It's not something we deal with a lot in the county, to be honest with you, especially not in a residential setting.
Have we ever dealt with it in the residential setting?
Not since I've been here. I've been here 6 years. And so what they've asked is to be afforded the opportunity to provide additional information related to residential sprinklers to the planning commission. I would expect that they're likely to request some kind of reconsideration of the item. I won't speak for them, but I will turn it over to them. Mr. Marty Cook is here, Mr. Elston is here as well, some other folks. And so I'll turn it over to them for anything that I want to talk to y'all about.
We're all ears.
Thank you all. Again, I'm Marty Cook, Special Planning from McAllister. I was not representing these folks when it was here a few weeks ago, but they reached out to me after. So I spoke with Josh and appreciate y'all affording us a few minutes to talk about this. Again, as Josh said, when this was presented at the last meeting, several of the commissioners had some really good questions about residential sprinkler systems because, as Josh said, that's not something that you all had considered before. But because of the uniqueness of this particular property and the development and the fact that these are very large lots, very far away from the road,
there is the possibility, and I'm not an expert, but we have one here, that sprinkler systems in these large homes far away from the road, that would be far away from hydrants anyway, might be a safer alternative for the residents. But you all had very good questions about what a residential sprinkler system looks like, what's it made of, what's the safety, and, is there are they reliable, and all those were great questions, which there wasn't really any answers for at that time. So tonight, we do have Casey Mulhorn here, who's the owner of All Star Fire Protection. He's also the president of the Tennessee Sprinkler Contractors Association, who perhaps can shed some light on what these types of systems look like in large homes on very large lots that are far away from the road, and whether that is even safer for residents than fire hydrants in very unique situations such as this. And I spoke with Mr. Sidler today about kind of the process. Our request would be that if it appears this is a situation where this alternative might be something that is better for this community and better for the residents and safer for the residents, that you all might consider rescinding your previous decision, bringing this back on the next, at the next meeting as an agenda item, considering this alternative in this very unique situation, and considering it, and certainly no guarantee that it would pass, but because of there being additional information available that hopefully will answer some of the questions this body had, it would be our hope that might be something that's at least considered. So, as you know, if you want to come up, and if you all have any questions for him, similar to the ones you had at the last meeting, hopefully you will be able to shed some light on this.
Okay, I guess the appropriate move would be to have questions from the floor. And if not, we can have him explain what a residential fire sprinkler system looks like in a house. I have encouraged this a little bit because the statistics regarding insurance companies much favor a fire sprinkler system. However, what I see in the codes, at least the one that Mr. Sutton presented to us, that concerns me greatly is a polyurethane or a plastic pipe, for lack of a better term. My concern is that if you had a fire that coincidentally came in right about where the meter, the water line came, and it burnt through, instantly your pressure's gone. There's no protection whatsoever. And then you don't have fire hydrants nearby, and it's a done deal. So the other thing that, Josh, maybe you can answer for me is, besides fire or putting out fires on a building, are there any other reasons to have fire hydrants? I know it's the older technology than fire sprinkler, but there may be other purposes for fire hydrants. I know that there's water line blow-offs, and stopping a fire with a pump truck.
Keeping fire from spreading. A lot of times, I don't know if the volunteer fire department guys have left, but a lot of times, by the time they get to the scene, what their mission is to keep it from spreading to some other home or property and that kind of thing. So there's a big use there. And in some cities and that kind of thing, sometimes they use hydrants, they'll let people fill swimming pools and stuff like that with them and that kind of thing. But their basic utility is going to be, putting the, as the fireman said, the wet stuff on the red stuff. And so, to spray the house if it's still involved, or to keep fire from spreading.
And also forest fires or grass fires, brush fires.
That's right. It's something that gets loose, yeah.
So I guess the answer to my question there would be that there are still purposes to have fire hydrants regardless of the fire sprinkler residences.
Sure. Sure, I mean, I think if you ask any fireman, and I'm not a fireman, I wish they were still here, to be honest with you, but if you ask most firemen, they're gonna, you know, they're maximalists when it comes to stuff like this, and so any fireman I've ever worked with, not here anywhere, is gonna tell you, we want hydrants and sprinklers in every home, you know, for every home that gets built anywhere in the state of Tennessee or wherever they work. And so, yeah, that is, the hydrants are there, it's a belt and suspenders kind of thing, you know, it helps the sprinklers are great for keeping the fire that starts in the house, you know, controlled, and the hydrants are for everything else.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out one other aspect of this, is that the utility districts are required to have certain blow-off sections, and they're required by the state to flush certain systems, and when they have to do repairs, there's retention time, so there's some certain requirements that the utilities have as well, that we need to look into this. I know just enough from what I've represented some utilities, that's as far as I can go on it. So whether it's relevant to this or not, I don't know, I just wanted to throw that out there, because the 6-inch line and the hydrants becomes a big deal when that comes up with utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Sidler. Now, John, refresh my memory, the line that runs in Brazier Lane is too small.
Right, there's a 4-inch line in the road.
Okay, so there's no way you can support a fire hydrant.
That's right.
I'm assuming that White House Utility District has blow-ups or somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's at some point on their lines, yeah, they'll have something to ensure that they can, you know, if they have to do line maintenance or something like that, they have to be able to blow the water right back out, after they work on something. I don't know how they do that, I've read in this area, I don't know.
Okay, and according to the owner of the property, to run a 6-inch line or bigger is cost prohibitive for what they're trying to do.
I have to defer to the property owner.
Okay, so, sir, your name again is?
Yeah, Casey Miller.
Casey Millwood. Casey, could you explain to us how the materials used, how a fire sprinkler system works in a residence, what the codes are?
Yeah, will do. So to David's point about the CPVC, that's the type of pipe that we do use typically in residential fire sprinkler systems. We also use that in high-rise buildings in downtown Nashville. We've done a lot of personally, and many times we use CPVC there as well. GO listed, it's been approved, it's an industry standard. Steel pipe, CPVC, both are industry standard. So they do have a fire rating. Pretty amazing when you watch the videos on fire being exposed to that pipe, how long that pipe actually lasts. It charms, it does not melt. Just like anything, it will give way under fire eventually, but it does have a very high fire resistant rating to answer your question. So a residential fire sprinkler system in a single family or duplex is what we call a 13D system. 13R system is when you get into up to a 4-story residential setting like an apartment complex. These, of course, would be a 13D system. The purpose of these systems is not to extinguish the fire. That's not what they're there for. They do that typically, but that's not their purpose. The purpose is to get people out and to save lives. So that's what the scope is on 13D. That would be the applicable code for these houses. So they would have a code. They would. It's not a code. It's a standard. They would have a standard that they were installed by. We've done a lot of those as well. And you know, I will say this as an advocate of the fire sprinkler industry. I serve on national committees. I go to quarterly board meetings nationally. Fire sprinklers are coming to single-family homes in our lifetime. A couple of states have already adopted it statewide. There's many cities, even in Tennessee, we've got a county that is zero tolerance. It's coming, and it is a good thing, in my opinion. You could call me biased, I probably am, but I also see a lot of data to the effects of fire and the devastation it can have and lost lives. So, it is a good thing, in my opinion, that we do put fire sprinklers in houses. This is a good thing as far as these houses go, in my opinion. I don't have a dog in the hunt as far as all the other goes, but anytime you put fire sprinklers in
something is a good day for us and for life safety. Real quick, how a fire sprinkler system works, it's not like Die Hard, we see the movie and he holds up the lighter and all the sprinkler heads go off. That doesn't happen. It's one head or two heads or however many heads are activated by the fire. A residential system for a single family home is typically a one or two head design. I won't get into all the details of when you design for one or two, but these would probably be a two head design, these houses would be. They have a 10-minute supply, that's all they need. Now, if you connect them to the city water supply, they're gonna have a lot more than that. That's all that's required. Why 10 minutes? Because within 10 minutes, we expect the fire department to be there to assist getting everybody out of the house, if there's anybody that's not capable of getting out of the house. And also, they're made to be economical, so they're not cost prohibitive, and people can afford to put them in their houses. And developers want to do them, and house builders want to do them. In a dream world, they do, but we know that's not the case all the time. So they are automatic in nature, like a fire hydrant that takes somebody to respond, time to hook up to it. These are instantaneous when they reach 155 degrees. Typically, that's what the goal is in these things. They operate, they go off, they're foolproof. I mean, these things are tested in the factories where they build these things. High standards is amazing. They operate, they just do. Every time they operate, it's so rare that, I don't even know if I have any data to give on that operating when it's supposed to. So all that being said, I can get into as much detail as you want. If you have any questions, I can explain. I do calculations on an ISIT 4, which means that top of the level as far as doing design calculations. So it's technical if you want to get, happy to answer that. Probably put a lot of you to sleep and talk too much about that. So.
Commissioner Miller.
My first question is, how often do you install sprinkler systems in rural areas that don't have access to fire hydrants?
It's rare. It's not super common, but it does happen.
Do you have a percentage?
Our company probably sees 4 or 5 a year that are in rural settings where, for one reason or another, they're required or they're just elected to be installed.
Is that in Tennessee or just?
That's just for us. Yeah, that's in Tennessee. We are over the whole southeast, but we mainly are in Tennessee. There's a lot of other companies that do work in some of those.
This question might be for the owner or whoever. I think I remember seeing from the presentation that this is a heavily wooded area. Is that correct? No?
I don't know, I know it's a very rocky area.
Rocky, not wooded.
Not wooded.
It's not wooded.
Not wooded. Okay.
Okay. So my next question would be, as was stated, that is for suppression to get people out. So if you bring a fire truck in and it only has the water on the truck and you have no fire hydrants to get to for extra water, is that going to mean that the houses around it are going to burn? Is this house going to? It's just questions, like questions. That's why we have the newer rule of the fire hydrants. But I also want to state on here, and I know I've said it before, that, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go to 5 acre lots, then you don't have to have the fire hydrant requirement, correct?
In general, that's correct. And now, if they want this to be a public road, then the lots have to be platted, and that will make them subject to our subdivision regulations, and you probably need to meet the hydrant requirements. Right, but by right in the state of Tennessee, any property owner that owns a big tract of property can partition it into 5 acre tracts, as long as they meet our minimum road access requirements. Back to Brazier Lane, and surveyors are pretty creative about figuring that out. You're exempted from all subdivision regulations requirements.
Mr. Shaw.
Brought this up last month, at least I asked a question, when we're talking about putting these type of systems in the home. Obviously, when you have a fire hydrant system and you have fire trucks show up, they can pretty much put water where they want it. So this system would then, would you foresee or envision that these systems will be located in every building, every outbuilding, every garage, rec facility, barns. Would you see that?
That's typically not required by code. When a system is required by code, it's mandatory. So, yeah.
Well, we're talking about a potential system that's not under any code here right now, because we don't have that code in Sumner County. We do not have a code that sprinklers is an alternative for fire hydrants. That's fine. Okay. So the next question says water sprinkler. Everything I looked at on the, and this helps, I appreciate you being here. Water sprinklers, everything I read on the internet as I educate myself, is for suppression only. And then you kind of backed that up when you said water sprinklers are not to extinguish a fire, it's to get people out, which makes a lot of sense to me. Which therefore goes back to the comment that was made a minute ago, is where do the trucks get their water when they run out of the limited water they're carrying on hand? So I think that's a good question. So every building, since we don't have a code, so what would you envision if we had this kind of property, since you install these things? Would you recommend to the builder that he or she needs to put a water sprinkler system in every building on the property?
I would say any building that's going to be occupied overnight, any type of building, if you're going to rent it out for Airbnb or whatever you may do with it, the kids are going to sleep out there overnight, whatever. If it's got beds in it, yeah, I would definitely recommend that.
Okay. And annual testing. How do you test these things? I mean, we test things, I say we, I don't test fire hydrants, but utility districts test fire hydrants. They flush them for stagnant water, for operational purposes. How do you conduct a test to ensure that it's actually still working?
Yeah, so basically you go to the riser, what we call the riser, that's where the water comes into the system. That there's a valve and there's a flow switch and there's typically a horn strobe that will go off and alert, the nearby people in the home or even neighbors that there is a fire, or at least that they have an activated fire sprinkler system. So at that point, what you're doing is you're testing the horn strobe to go off, you're testing that it actually activates water flow, and you're testing the biggest thing, reason we do test and we'll test the fire sprinkler system, is there water actually coming in to that system, right? Other than that, there's not much to test. It's pretty simple. It's pipe and a head. So you don't go and test each head. You don't go and test each head. You don't want to sell it. That would be bad.
Does the systems have a water reservoir system within each residence? That way, if something's, obviously other residents are utilizing water, other property owners on the line, on the 4-inch line, is using water and probably don't know there's a fire going on. So is there a reservoir that's located in each house?
No, there doesn't have to be. Typically, when you have a really poor water supply, or you have a house that's on top of the hill, and the pressure just can't get up to the house, then you have a tank and pump system. So you basically have a really small pump, get the tank. That tank is meant to supply 10-minute durations. You're talking a 400 or 500 gallon tank that's in the house. That is cost prohibitive, it can be, but sometimes it's a better trade-off because the tap fee, we need a full 1-inch tap and a full 1-inch line typically for residential. The other strategy is to go to a really reduced spacing on the sprinkler head, which is not recommended. They just get a lot more sprinkler heads, and homeowner thinks it's ugly because they get sprinkler heads everywhere, they're 12 feet by 12 feet. It's not a good idea. And so instead, we like to space them out 18 by 18, 20 by 20, really space those sprinkler heads out 20 feet by 20 feet, we say that. So for that, we need a full 1-inch tap, and either sometimes on a really large house or a really long run up to the house. We're doing a 27,000 square foot house in Anderson right now. It's crazy. When you have something like that, you might want a larger tap, like an 1.25 inch tap.
most of our taps are 3/4 inch, you get the larger taps, but then my next question gets into capacity, which I'll just let you hold, I won't let you answer that, is my question is, how many 1-inch taps are going, can you supply off the 4-inch line? It's 5,800 feet off a 12-inch line, 5,800 foot's a long way away. I know exactly the details of this area, so, I did not know you require 1-inch tap, that's just big.
Recommended, I won't say it's required. So the alternative, the reason I mentioned that, the alternative is to do a pump and tank setup in the house,
Okay.
which is good. The negative to that is you're relying on electricity to power the pump, if your sprinkler system to activate, unless you have a bypass, so you could do kind of a combination of both. The positive is you have a water supply that is there no matter what, right? The great thing about connecting to the city water main is, and it is a combined line, it's your domestic line and your fire line going to the house. Typically, people get upset when they can't flush their toilet or turn any of their water on. They know when their water is shut off pretty quickly. That's a fail-safe for a sprinkler system that we like to have. We don't like to have it, so we want it to buy if we can.
Other questions? Mr. Belcher?
Mr. Stroll kind of touched on this, and they get listed for, remind me, Josh, how many residences are planned for this?
19.
19. For 19 homes in the area, and I don't know if what has been submitted is submitted, what the average square footage of the homes are. But typically, let's just, for discussion purposes, go out to 2,500 square foot home. What is the required flow capacity for the sprinkler system for each house?
So it depends how you calculate it, how you design the system. But in general, 30 gallons per minute to 40 gallons per minute is what we're looking for.
So 30 to 40 by 19 houses. So
We don't calculate all the houses in one. In fact, even on a high rise, we only calculate typically 1,500 square feet that is flowing at one time, because at the end, it's not all houses will be on fire. It's not even, hopefully, just one at a time, too. There's some arson or something going on. That's devious. So, we don't have to worry about water usage in combination type setting of population.
Another question, and this is, I guess, for the developer. Is this development planning on having an HOA? And does that HOA restrict outbuildings? And that if the HOA says you can't have one, Mr. Straw's concern is a moot point.
I don't think that's determined yet. And really, I think it will be up to the homeowner. I mean, if you have a garage with antique cars in it, then you might want to go to the expense of putting a sprinkler system in. But I think at this point, if people are going to be there, then that would be the main concern.
And let me say this, I'll speak for firefighters, because I have a lot of friends that are, and I serve on a lot of committees with firefighters. My concern for them is going into the sprinkler house, first of all, which is scary to think about. Not knowing how many people are in the house, where they're at, if there's anybody in the house, are they endangering their life? I can guarantee they can verify nobody's in that house. They're not going in that house. I mean, unless they think it's a real small fire they can control. If it's consumed at all, they're going to back off and they're just going to let it burn, try to control it. It's going to be a loss. They're not going to, and we don't want them endangering their life trying to do that. So, going into an outbuilding or going into a garage, unless they have some reason to believe there's somebody. I sure their training tells them, and I know it does, don't go into that structure if you see any danger or it's consumed. We're just going to back off and let it go. I don't have a dog in this hunt. I would just say, if you have really large lots and you're not worried about the spread of fire, from structure to structure, and your lot naturally over there built literally as far apart as touching each other. That is a huge concern there. In a rural setting, it's not much of a concern. a sprinkler house on a 1 or 2 or 3 acre lot, whatever it may be, man, that's ideal, and I can speak again for firefighters. That's a win for the, they will take that every day for fire hydrant. Now, whether or not a fire hydrant is also needed, it's personal for you guys, so.
I'm in agreement that a sprinkler house is,
Yeah.
my opinion, my knowledge is that it's far preferred over every hydrant side of the street. My last question is to Josh, and this is a major concern for me, is since Sumner County doesn't have an adopted code for sprinkler systems, I think it's not a good move on our part to endorse something without Sumner County having adopted a code for it to be applied to, and that it opens Pandora's box as to where we allow this particular system this time, and then before any codes are adopted, then another system comes in, et cetera, and so on, and this could snowball. Don't know that it would, but as an engineer, I just have a real hard time with allowing something without having adopted standards by the authority having jurisdiction, being Sumner County. So that gives me real hard part. Not that I'm against the sprinkler system, I think it's far superior to the hydrants, but it gives me a lot of concern.
Commissioner Miller.
I agree with Mr. Belcher. I mean, there's no precedent set, so we don't really have, and it's so rare. But if we say yes, then it's probably not going to be as rare. It's probably going to be in more common. So I agree. I think we need to reevaluate and put something in our planning and zoning code to address this situation. Because we've never seen it before, but we're changing everything, so there's probably going to be a lot more that's coming, and I think that we need to adopt something. But also, I know that, not to call anybody out, but I know that there's a fireman here that can probably speak to how many gallons the truck carries and how far that would go if he wouldn't mind.
Yeah, we actually have a 25-year fireman here.
Okay, good, okay.
So I've been a builder, a retired fireman.
Can you come back to the mic?
Yes, sorry.
I can hear you.
I'm a retired fireman, and I am one of the owners of Crush. But I
Do you mind stating your name for?
Steve McCoy.
Okay, thank you.
I built in Cheatham County, and where they require sprinkler systems, of course, I for it. But it's a life safety code, and I'm not certain, but I thought it was a state code. So I mean, as far as us just throwing a sprinkler system in a home, there are requirements that have to be met for it to pass, because it has to get inspections, they do annual tests. And White House Water has told us that since it is a mile and some change away for an 8-inch water line, that the sprinklers would be a good alternative, and that their system would accept that. I'm not an engineer, but when White House Water, Rocky and all them tell us in documentation that it will support it, if my family, and I live in Sumner County, a sprinkler system is going to go off immediately, guys, girls. If I call 911 in the county, Jim Bob's got to leave work. He's got to get to that fire truck. Then he's got to get to the fire scene. Then he's got to wait on 2 other people, possibly 3 other people, before they can even possibly enter the house to put it out. So in that circumstance, you're generally doing this around and around, protecting the other structures. Well, and in that case, you're setting up at a fire hydrant. If it's a mile away or 2 miles away, they set up a tank, they pump and they shuttle. It's just a mobile fire hydrant. They're shuttling their fire engines. And on this situation here, we've been back and forth for 2 years. Do this the right way, do this the other way. And we want to make it the right way. We want it to be a county road, to be pretty, not to turn out like Petey Branch Road or just a catastrophe. But it's like, what do? You know, we can't afford to put a 1.5 miles of 8-inch water line. It's not feasible. But a fire system, a sprinkler system, and it's not for your barn. If somebody wants to put it in for their cars, or for whatever, then they do. Just like Carrie Underwood's house the other day, it caught on fire. She had a tank. Guess what? That's what put her house out. They didn't have a fire hydrant. She had a sprinkler system, and they extinguished the fire. But it is a state life safety code that has been adopted by certain counties, and obviously has not been adopted here. Thank you for letting me speak. It is a good alternative, and I would much rather do this the pretty way and have we've got a nice entrance in versus doing 5.01 acres with 50-foot easements to the road, and then we just roll it. But we're trying to do this the right way, and we feel like we've just been met with just opposition after opposition. We're trying to get it done the right way.
And let me clarify, I'm sorry.
That's okay. David's here. Not me.
I pro sprinkler system. Like I said, I believe firmly it's much better than having the hydrants up the street. And I realize there's codes out there that address this. My stumbling block is that Sumner County hasn't adopted a specific code for this yet. There's nothing on the books that
Yes,
has
sir.
been adopted. Not that they couldn't, the commissioners, if it's put on the agenda, I don't know the protocol, 2 months from now could adopt the same thing that Cheatham County has. And if they do, that's great. Now we have an adopted code to address this. I just have concern over that being a stumbling block for what happens after this gets approved, if it were to be approved.
And in the builder term, where I have been, it's just like we call the state electrical steel. Hopefully, we're going to get to an inspector here in this building going on. But we still call for a state electrical inspector. Would be no different. The state fire marshal comes out and inspects it. I mean, there's no way around it. If we put a sprinkler system in a home, the state fire marshal will come out and inspect it.
I'm sorry, I didn't no, go ahead. Let me correct you. So, state fire marshal is only involved, they will not, so the state fire marshal is only involved in state-owned buildings, exempt jurisdictions. This would be the exempt jurisdiction, but it would have to be a 4-story or taller building, it would have to be a high hazard, like they're mixing chemicals or doing something like that. So, state fire marshal, Tennessee is very fragmented in the state when it comes to codes and AHJs administering. That being said, the state fire marshal wouldn't have any involvement in this. They don't have any involvement in a house built in Henderson or a lot of stuff that's built in Henderson or Gallatin that are exempt jurisdictions. They don't get involved in that stuff. So let me ask this, because I am adding to the commission here. What is the model building code adopted for Sumner County? Do you have a model building?
The 2019 code.
2019 IRC for residential. Okay, so IRC does have reference to the standards, NFPA standards. I'm ignorant to that part. You may have to pull that in as an adopted standard, but I think it's just automatic when a fire sprinkler system is going to be installed, whether it's required or not, then it will fall under the 13D standard because the IRC already adopts that standard. And typically, if you're in 2019, that means the 2016 NFPA standards, or 17 or 18, whatever the previous year was adopted, will be the appropriate NFPA standard that will govern the installation. On top of that, Tennessee does have a requirement for fire sprinkler contractors to be licensed. Believe it or not, New York does not. We do, which is crazy. That's a good thing. And so it is highly regulated. We get in trouble if we do something wrong. We have to have nice 3 or 4 on staff, like myself, to be the RMB. One of the RMB for the company, which is a responsible management board. I have to sign off on the drawings and designs and calculating and I don't develop them directly. I'm similar to a professional engineer. I don't claim to be a PE. I'm not a PE, but that's when it comes to that portion of it, that's how I act. I act as the design professional when it comes to design that. So it's highly regulated. We take it very seriously. All of us designers do. Most licensed designers do take it seriously. It's not just something that is, we fight very hard for the plumbers in the room. We fight very hard for plumbers not to install our systems because it is complicated. There's a lot to it, and we don't want one failing on our watch because as an industry, it looks bad for us. It's just not good. And I think it's not
when it comes to that, there will be standards involved, whether or not you can follow the code chain and say that this edition of 13D is applicable and has to be followed. I'll leave that up to you guys to figure out, because I don't know exactly how you adopted the IRC. If you amended it, if you've taken anything out of it.
The residential sprinkler requirements were just excluded altogether, is how we did it. And we adopted the 19 code, but made certain exceptions where we excluded certain chapters, and so the residential sprinkler requirements were not part of that.
When was that,
It was after the new commission took office. It was about, I want to say, maybe about a year ago or something like that. We came through with the new building code.
I don't recall seeing that.
I will say that as a licensed sprinkler contractor, which you have to be one to install a fire sprinkler system in the state, we have to follow the standards when we do our design, whether or not you guys require the standard we follow or not, we have to. So there's very little exposure, I think, when it comes to that. I'm taking exposure as the owner of the company when I do it. So if that helps.
I'm going to turn back a little bit because I was one of my members to ask questions first, but the 10-minute requirement, is that a function of the pipe getting too hot to work? Is that a function? What drives that?
Okay, so that's driven by just a lot of it is just rolling the dice and having to have some type of number of floors. Economics drives that, so you don't have a tank that takes up your whole garage, or takes up a quarter of your garage, it's still open. But it's mainly driven by the average response time for the fire department. Now, in a rural setting, is it more than 10 minutes typically? We have to just give an example, it might be 30 minutes before somebody gets there. The 10 minutes is also based on just somebody getting out of the house. How long would it take for somebody to wake up, go find the kids, wherever they fell asleep at last night, grab the dogs and cats and whatever else you're going to grab and get out of the house. So it's a combination.
So I'm assuming there's a mechanical bell or something that goes off when the water starts to flow.
Yes, it'd be an electric bell. So the chemical bells are really, they became non-industry standard. They're actually not very reliable when it comes down to it. The automobiles will have typically a battery backup with the flow switch. So whether or not that gets monitored or not off-site, since it's single off-site, that's an option, but it's still not required on a 13 type of system.
And I misspoke, we adopted the 2021 code, and it was in May of 2023.
Yeah, I think in 19 it was still in the appendix, so you could adopt it in 21, put it in the main body, and you had to adopt it out.
Right. Yeah. And we had the old 15 code that didn't have it at all. Yeah, we replaced it with the 21.
Commissioner Miller.
I think this is very good information. I don't think we're at a place right now where we want to make a decision on this. I think we want to do some research and maybe see about changing our regulations and our code. This has been good information, but we've been at this for an hour. And I do appreciate you guys coming and explaining, and it's helpful. Was kind of what we were missing the last time. So there's a lot of holes that could be filled. I take extensive notes, so I think that this is something that this body is going to have to, discuss maybe in a study session at a later date, and then we can go from there.
May I say one more thing before y'all vote? Okay, whatever. However it may be. Guys, we're trying to do this right way, the pretty way for Sumner County. After tonight, we've got 19 lots, we've got 19 road frontages. We're trying to not make it a hodgepodge. We put this in front of y'all as just a help along type of thing, to make it to where it looks like Sumner County and not something that just got dropped in. But it's costing us $15,000 a month. So we've got to move ahead, and whether that be the 19 lots with the road frontage, we're done, joint use agreement, wash our hands. We're just trying to do this the right way to help out, to make it more appealing to the people that are moving in our area.
And I think I can speak on behalf of everybody, we really appreciate that. This is not a quick fix. Unfortunately, I don't even know what I don't know is involved in bringing this fire sprinkler issue to the forefront. Josh, can you address this at all?
Well, it would depend on what you want to do. I mean, if the county commission said, hey, we want to require residential sprinklers across the county, that's a real big decision, right? And so that's not as simple as just amending the building code. If you want to amend the building code, you go through a public hearing process and you do it. Adding in residential sprinklers as a blanket requirement. Now, doing it on a case-by-case basis, that's probably different where people are voluntarily doing it as a flat restriction like these guys are proposing to do. An across-the-board requirement, though, for single-family residential, there's a process outlined in state law that you have to follow, with special public hearings, and it's a whole other separate process from adopting building codes. And so, I don't know enough about that myself to know. I know the city of Millersville, a couple of years ago, went through the process. They adopted the new code with all the residential sprinkler requirements, but they neglected to follow those additional steps and had to go back and redo it. So they ended up having to backtrack and have public hearings and stuff like that. So it can be done, but there's a whole process and statute that you have to follow. I'd have to talk to our building code director about what all goes into that.
Yeah, I think we'd be way off of requiring it countywide. But, as far as, to do this specific for this unique situation, I don't know where we're at or what we would need to do.
Right. So, I mean, as far as, we have to research it with codes as far as, I suspect, and as the gentleman said, there's the requirements for sprinkler systems, residential sprinkler systems are in the 2021 code that we've adopted. We just excluded that portion. I would suspect any that are installed are subject to that requirement since we've adopted, but I don't know that for sure. One issue, another thing, you wanted to really do it probably right. If you're going to start granting exceptions in the subdivision regulations and allowing residential sprinklers, you probably will have some parameters for what qualifies for that exception. I guess maybe, if there's home spacing requirements or anything like that. So that's something else you might think of as well. But that goes back to the waiver requirements that we were talking about earlier.
Mr. Straw?
Yes, sir. The builder, you're the builder, owner, developer?
Me?
Owner, developer?
I'm one of them. There's four of us.
So you're like the builder, owner, and developer, is that correct?
On this piece of property, unfortunately, yes.
Okay. So I appreciate your comments, I really appreciate everybody. You made a comment that, I come from the water utility district area, community, Sumner County. You made a comment that White House Utility District stated that sprinklers would work.
Yes, sir. We've got documentation.
You got that letter.
Yes, sir.
And you also stated, or it was in the package that we looked at last month, that fire hydrants were not an option.
Correct. It would be another $2 million expense.
Yeah.
So,
And the reason I asked this, and you go on record state this, that the documentation I got, I don't see that from my house utility district, okay? And, I've got those copies, I will review them because I could be mistaken. But I see many options that you went back to White House Utility District, and each time they came back with written responses and tried to how to meet your plan. So my question is, since 2022, 3 times in 22, I think it's 1 or 2 times in 23, 2 times in 24, were you just not able to find an option that fit what you wanted to do? And that's my question, because the reason I say that, and I'm not going to get into these letters tonight, that's not what this is about. I'm just stating that the original response that kind of started all from May of 2022, you obviously been wanting to do this for a long time, but you've been going back to White House Utility District with other options. You even went multiple times without even asking for any fire protection. How about that?
Well, originally, we were told we wouldn't be fought with any opposition for the fire hydrants.
Yes,
So that's where it started.
who's fighting?
We had to pull
Okay, well, what I'm saying though, until basically the third request in May of 23, then you asked for fire hydrants, which means that you realized that was kind of important, meeting the minimum standards. But you took that, did you just determine financially that wasn't a feasible option?
And it states in the code if it's feasible, what's feasible.
No, I'm asking you, was it feasible? You told Water Utility District what you wanted. They took the time to give you an estimate of the cost and not total cost, but whatever, some of the cost. But, did you determine that wasn't a feasible option to go that route?
No, sir, back in April of last year, y'all couldn't meet a quorum, so y'all postponed it. And at that time point, we had a feasible financial obligation. We're trying to figure out a way to sell this property. So, but in the beginning, we were told we would not have to meet the fire hydrants.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know.
There's emails back in from March. Yeah.
Well, that helps answer the different responses, because White House, the utility district really don't tell you no. They tell you what it's gonna cost to do what needs to be done.
Well, I agree with you, yes, sir. They did tell us no. They did tell us no on this. They told us that all we could get was 19 taps if we were gonna have to sprinkle. But we've gone back and forth trying to rack our brain. We're not developers, we're not the big developers. But we've gone back and forth trying to figure out a way to sell this, and we've got to go. There's just two options.
And I appreciate the candor and just transparency, because we had to have that last month when we had met with another issue that came up. Until we got it thrown out there, we kind of understand what was going on. It helped us. So I appreciate that. It helps me understand what you're trying to do and why so many different requests were submitted to White House Utility District and where we're at now. So
Yeah,
thank you.
We've right around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we have the expert, I just want to ask two very quick questions, and that'll be it for me. One, just to be very clear and white boil the cobwebs from our conversation, there is a national or industry or state code standard or system you are required to follow when you install this. Is that accurate? That is correct. Okay. Yeah. The second thing is, in your personal opinion, I know there's some bias because it's your industry, do you find sprinklers to be equivalent or superior to fire hydrants in the preservation of life?
They are far superior.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the Commissioner Miller?
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Commissioner Holmes, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, guys.
There's probably a balance between putting out the targeted fire in that area under that head versus slowing out.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's gonna be kind of like, especially if you put out